Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Top Voice Tuesday. We are here July 29th, the last Tuesday of July. I hope everyone's having a wonderful summer. I'm excited to be joined by Dr. Harvey Castro today. I'm going to give you a chance, Dr. Castro, to introduce yourself as always. We're here to talk about something that when you and I first met, about behavior and about preventative behavior and what AI is teaching us about our inclination towards maybe preventative or corrective behavior and how that works. Before we get started, as always, for those of you tuning in live, please do leave comments in the chat. Let us know where you're dialing in from. We'll take a question or two. And as a reminder, we are now live on all podcast platforms. So if you missed this live discussion, we'll be up on YouTube later today and up on Apple, Spotify, all the big podcast platforms. And we've already got a few folks dialing in. Dr. Castro, as is customary for this show, we have a first question. First of all, tell us who you are and what you do. And secondly, how did you get to the top of the Top Voice Mountain?
Yeah, so honored to be here. Thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited about today. So I've been actually looking forward to today. So thank you. A little bit about me. I'm a board certified emergency room doctor. Been doing it for 20 years now plus. I call myself a little bit like a nutty professor because I'm not the typical doctor in that I've had my own emergency rooms, my own hospitals, billing company, staffing. Back when the ChatGPT came out in 22, I wrote the first book on how to use ChatGPT in healthcare. And then before that, when the first iPhone came out, I was the first person in the world that wrote an application called IV Meds. Basically, you tap it 3 times, it gave you the dose. I did about 40 other applications. Those went all viral. And so this leads perfectly into LinkedIn. On the LinkedIn, I really think that, I wasn't trying to get Top Voice, that little blue badge for people that don't know. I was just kind of like you, just doing my own thought leadership. And I really think it was just this constant posting. I think the reason I got it is because I was always, like, for example, the ChatGPT Healthcare in 22, and I was always writing thought leadership posts about how can we leverage artificial intelligence in healthcare. And I was kind of shocked when I got an email saying, hey, you'll be a top voice. And at the time, I didn't know what that meant. And then when I looked it up, I was like, oh, wow. So I think, because I get that a lot, it's like, how'd you get this? And I said, I really think I was just constantly posting and showing videos and how to. And I think that niche got me there. So that's how I think I got it.
Yeah. How long have you been really active on the platform, would you say?
It's kind of funny you say that. I think ChatGPT and healthcare, that book got me active into LinkedIn. So if I had a guess, it was probably around November 2022 is roughly when I started. And then I just made it a habit. Every day I would post and create. And I really think like a year later I got it. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think there's one of the things we've been talking about on this show is the comparative experience of many of the top voices. And many people think it's just about more and about doing things longer, but it's about consistency. It's about repetition. It's about having a voice. And what I hear you saying is you are also blazing a trail in this conversation of AI and healthcare, which is something that we're going to dive into now. So let's talk about this conversation. And so as a physician, you've seen firsthand how people avoid prevention. As an ER doctor, you see the results of accidents and everything in between. What goes wrong in the world of preventative behavior, and why do you think this tendency or this tension is such a human experience of our ability to fix problems when they happen, but also spend time investing in preventing problems?
Yeah, it's really interesting. If we have a letter in the mail or email saying, hey, we're going to turn off your electricity at 5 o'clock today, that bill gets paid ASAP because we're threatened. It's really hard in healthcare for us to plant the seed. In fact, I feel like a lot of systems aren't created in the way that helps promote prevention. And I think from a humanistic point of view, we tend to turn off fires before we're worried about something that may happen in 5, 10, 30 years. A good example is our youth. If you tell your teenager or young adults, like, hey, you need to save for retirement, they're looking at you like, retirement? Like, I'm not even thinking of that kind of stuff. But at the older we get ourselves, we're like, okay, yeah, I'm getting a little older. Probably need to do some prevention here. And so for all of us, prevention, even in our brain, how we define it looks differently. Case in point, if your employer or your insurance company gives you points for being active, I'll make this funny. Somebody will probably put a wearable on their dog and be like, yeah, I'm super active. My dog's running around. But our system's not created flipped. In other words, if we had a healthcare system that was really proactive and saying, hey, if you do X, Y, Z, we're going to lower your insurance. We're going to even give you a year off of not paying, stuff like that. People be like, oh my God, what do I got to do? To take it to the next level, Singapore, I'm an advisor for the country of Singapore and how to use AI in healthcare, and what they're doing amazes me. And I know you guys are gonna be like, whoa, dude, that's a little bit too much Big Brother-ish, but let me tell you what they're doing.
Let's hear
They
it.
have the genetic sequence of the entire population of citizens for Singapore. They have the retinal scan of every citizen of Singapore. And you're like, oh, dude, that's too much info. But let me tell you on the prevention side why this is so important. They've picked out certain diseases. One of them is hypercholesterolemia. And basically, at a young age, say 18, 15, your cholesterol's so high that you could have a heart attack in your 20s. Well, they're already screening for these people. They're looking for them. And now they're using that database to start them on medication decades before they have a heart attack. He's seen that's going to help increase their lifestyle, live longer, live better. And now their loved ones are not going to die in their 20s. And I thought, man, this is truly a way of using preventive medicine. So sorry, I was a little over. I talked too much on that one.
No, that's great. And we've got some big comments in the chat that I want to get to, but it reminds me of a story when I was maybe just turned 40. I lived down in Southern California, and there was an article in the local newspaper of a man who had a heart attack at age 40, and he passed away. Really at a time when most people think this is a rare occurrence. And so there was a study that got started, and they asked for a lot of volunteers. We got, I don't know, $5,000 worth of tests done for maybe a couple $100, all built around this idea of, do you really understand the trajectory that you're on? And of course, the data that we got back was really informative about what you might correct and what you might start to adjust. So that really resonates with my own experience. And I'll tell you that information, I'm a pretty fit, healthy guy. Even at 40, there was information in there that I didn't know that has changed my behavior. So there's this tension between collecting data, having information, and then acting on it. I think you rightly raised that maybe there's some privacy or some data issues in there. So let's talk about that piece and how AI helps. And you did a TED Talk a while back. For those of you that haven't seen it, I think you've done a couple that are really about this link between AI and prevention, and how now AI can shift us from treating symptoms to solving root causes. And you just gave an example. So how is that starting to take hold in the world of healthcare?
Yeah, great question. When I did my TED Talk, I did 4, by the way. So just type in Harvey Castro TEDx and you'll see 4 of them. But literally, I was walking on stage and I was about to give an example about how AI can help prevent diseases. And as I'm walking onto the stage, like I had like 3 minutes. One of my colleagues, he's a anesthesiologist, said, "Harvey, my iWatch saved my life." And I'm like talking to him like, "Okay, dude, love you to death, but like I'm about to hit stage and I gotta like hang up." And I literally mentioned him in my TED Talk, and basically here's what happened. Anesthesiologist forever, and he's in the OR, and he notices his watch telling him that his heart's kind of messed up and something's not right. And he's like, "Harvey, I felt great. Nothing was wrong with me. Like I could have kept going through that surgery." And the watch kept telling him, "Hey, check your heart, check your heart." So then he finally like found somebody else to come. He wired himself an EKG, and he was having runs of tachycardia to the point where he had to go to the ER and get zapped to get his heart rate back.
Wow.
And he didn't feel a thing. And then he ended up having an ablation of his heart for that part of the muscle. Electricity was not working right, so he had it fixed. And I thought, man, this is exactly what I was coming on the stage to talk about, how this technology can do the predictive analytics, can be like, hey, there's some things going on. The second thing I want to talk about is this concept of digital twins. You see, Michael, if you're my patient, and let's just pretend I can create a digital twin of you with all your data, what you do, and how your genetics. I know that sounds big brotherish, but take it all, and assuming I have it in a secure form, then I can literally start saying, okay, let's try this medication with Michael. Let's try this other medication. His genes say this type of medicine won't work, so let me try this. And then now I'm able to look at you, Michael, and say, hey, try this medication. I've already tried 7 other ones. This one is probably the one that's going to work for you. What I've just done is created personalized medicine, taking care of the dose to the point where it should be for you. And are we there yet? We're getting really close. And again, the more data I have, the more I know. One of my favorite statements is, we don't know what we don't know. And so this is why I'm thinking, man, if these wearables are telling me, hey, dude, your heart rate's jacked, hey, digital twin, these are the things that work for you, then it's allowing me to start seeing patterns and discovering things, again, things that I did not know. And so this is how I start seeing, like, for example, I want to lose weight. I'm wearing a wearable that tells me how bad my sugar is. I'm not a diabetic. I'm not a pre-diabetic. I just want to know so that when I do have certain type of foods, I'm like, huh, this one really checked my sugar. And I would have never guessed. Again, telling me what I know that I didn't know. And now on the micro coaching part of it, I'm thinking, man, if this watch is telling me, hey, Harvey, you didn't sleep last night, you're about to be in front of 1,000 people speaking, you need to make sure you get your rest. Or a more practical example is, if I didn't sleep all night and then I'm going to go work out really hard, my device may say, dude, not today. You're going to actually do more harm to your body than good.
So this, what you're describing, which I think is fascinating, and look, I've got an Apple Watch, I've got all the things. I just got my blood drawn on Monday. We're doing a kind of a quarterly panel of trying some different supplements and shifts in behavior to understand. I'm Latin, so like you, I have a predisposition towards high cholesterol. I've had it my whole life. Doesn't matter what I do, and those sorts of things. So we're working on systems to try to address that. And what you're saying is, if someone can trust the system enough to be able to offer up their data, I can run scenarios that allow me to experiment with different interventions without having to wait for the problem to happen, because treating diabetes is a lot harder than preventing diabetes. Treating a heart attack is a lot harder than preventing a heart attack. So what are some of the costs in this equation of waiting so long for the problem to happen versus investing in this early stage kind of system and data environment and trust environment?
Yeah, great question. Unfortunately, the cost of U.S. chronic disease is north of $4 trillion a year. That's the cost of all of it. But if we were to put money into preventative care, that cost could drop 4 to 6 times. I'll give you a personal example, and I gave it in my TED Talk. Unfortunately, my dad died of a heart attack. Literally, we didn't have any warning signs. He had his heart attack, and he was gone. And I wish we had had signs so we could do something. On the other side, my mother, she had 2 different types of cancers. She's alive 30 years later. And the reason she's alive is because she's an ultrasound technician, and she happened to be scanning herself, and she found this little nodule, got scanned, and it ended up being a cancer here and another in her tongue. And since she caught it so early, again, that preventative in a kind of way, she was able to get chemo, treatment, everything, and she's fine. Had she not caught that, I know she would not be here today. And so the ability to prevent, obviously financial, emotional, can change all of these things. So I'm really excited about AI, because I'm looking at it as, man, I can say pretty confident that the kids that are born today will live over 100 years old because of all these things that we're talking about right now.
Yeah. You've been in ERs, and I think you're talking about some of this. You've been in the most high pressure situations that people can imagine outside of open conflict and saving people's lives. And yet there's sort of 2 systems, I think, in the healthcare world. There's this crisis response experience that what the ER has become and what it is for good reason. And there's the institutional structure of healthcare that's geared around what you're describing of preventative maintenance, check-ins, checkups, all of that. We get a lot of press about the healthcare system in this country, particularly, and the profitability of these 2 systems driving behavior. Can you speak to this tension again of like preventative care isn't as profitable as crisis care? And how does that shift the structural experience of actually how we go through the healthcare system?
Yeah, good question. Unfortunately, and I'm one too, that we procrastinate, and then when things are too bad is when we jump in. And to the first point, when the first question, we need to change the system so that there's more immediate, intermediate, and long-term rewards for being preventative on our health. If you could just prevent things early, I'll give you a real example. For me personally, a couple of years ago, I was diagnosed as a pre-diabetic, freaked the heck out of me out. I was like, oh my God, I do not want insulin. I don't want this lifestyle. I don't want to like amputate my leg one day because I'm doing really crappy. And I have a sweet tooth. And like you, Hispanic, go to my mom and they give me a bunch of food. And if I don't eat it all, my mom's like, what happened? You don't like my food? It's like, no, mom, I just don't need to eat all the food, And so it's kind of funny. But my point is this. I took it serious. And I started working out, losing weight, watching what I ate, figuring out what's good and what's bad. Yes, I still have desserts here and there, but I'm proud to say I've lost probably like 40 pounds now because I've
Good
been
for
like
you.
so hyper focused, and now I'm not a pre-diabetic and all my numbers are looking good. And TMI, but I got on a scale and it said my age was less than my actual age. But then when I had that same scale 2 years ago, it was saying I'm older than I really was. So I was like,
There you
okay,
go.
so I'm actually reversing the process here. At least the scale is saying so, maybe. But either way, it's something it's detecting that I'm doing the right thing. And so for you in this conversation, I'm going to tell people out there, you don't know what you don't know. Find your best doctor and then be an advocate for yourself so that you can start doing some preventive medicine. Because the last thing, as an ER doctor, I can tell you, I get it all the time. It's like, man, it's just too late. Man, doc, I wish I had known. Well, guess what? AI, if we really leverage it, you got the right team in place, we'll know way ahead of time.
So you mentioned, and that's a great example of this challenge I think that we have of maybe putting our heads in the sand to some information that we don't like to hear. We don't want to experience hard truths. All of these things I deal with my clients in different ways about maybe how their business is doing, how they're doing as a leader, and facing the information, I think, is what you're describing. So let's play a little scenario out where I'm the average person who has access to Chat GPT. You've described some very complicated data environments that's between me and my physician. How do I leverage AI in just helping me as an average everyday person get better at taking care of myself? What are things I can do to actually start
Yeah.
leveraging the platform?
Oh, this
Anyone,
is good.
there's many different platforms.
So this is a tough question because as a doctor, I'm not worried when I tell other doctors to use AI because guess what? They got a license. The state of whatever they got a license from
Yes,
said
let
you're a
me
doctor.
qualify. None of this is medical advice. So please do not take what Dr. Castro says and then go too far with it. But we're just playing out a scenario.
Yeah. And so with that said, if the thing hallucinates, I'm not worried about Dr. X because Dr. X technically should know better. Kind of like he orders an MRI CAT scan and it says it's wrong and they know it. Same idea. With the patient, my biggest worry is they don't know what they don't know. They don't have all this clinical data or training. And so if it hallucinates, in theory, let's say they're in the part outside the US where they can go to any pharmacy and get the medication, they can self-diagnose, go get their medicine, and then that just worries me. Now, how can you use it? One of the simple ideas I always say is if I had a cigar today and I started smoking in front of you guys, you'd be like, what the heck is wrong with Dr. Castro? He's freaking that cigar. He should know better. But if I did that, let's just say 30, 40 years ago, nobody would think twice. In fact, they'd probably even grab a cigar with me and they'd smoke on the
Right.
podcast. That analogy is what I want to tell you today. Simple things that you can do. You can, if you're okay with it, again, it's your personal data. You can, in theory, download your Apple Watch data. Again, if you're okay with it, literally upload it to an AI and tell me, hey, look at my parameters. What can I do to live longer? Here are my medical conditions. What of these things can be changed to help improve my health? Literally, it would tell you, and it'd be like, okay, X, Y, Z. And then on the hallucination part, you can go backwards and say, okay, here's the tips. Let me see if show me the data. Give me the articles. Show me the actual place. And then you can go back, read the article, and be like, yeah, it makes sense. Then you're there. Obviously, I'm going to say you need the human in the loop, not just any human. I'm going to say you need a healthcare professional in the loop. So if you have a question in X, let's say diabetes, then I would say your family medicine doctor, your endocrinologist, and then you're growing. The second thing I want to give is a quick fun hack. You're going to like this, Michael. Um, the older I get, all these things that I'm reading, it's like, Harvey, you need to work out and not just do cardio. I love walking and running. It's like, no, I need weights. So I was like, darn it. So I put my own personal data, put it into an AI agent, and I said, look, I'm 51 years old. I need to put some mass on me. I don't want to be like this musclehead, but I need mass. And you're going to love this. It went through. It gave me a whole workout plan, but not just a workout plan, like how many sets, how heavy, how long. And then it gave me, and I said, I just want one piece of equipment. I said, it's a kettlebell. I want to start with that. And what's crazy is it gave me like all these exercises for like, I asked for a 3-day plan and a 4-day plan. And then what's really cool is I said put websites. So now, and then I converted the whole thing to a website, and it's on my LinkedIn. But here's the cool part. Now I can literally open up a website. It's personalized to me. I can click. I did 1 set, 2 sets. It shows my progression, and I'm like, man, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I've done similar things with that, and what I hear you saying is use AI to get what I think you're describing as baseline information about the potential universe of things that you might be experiencing. If you trust it enough to load your data, and you can load it into your own secure system. What's so funny is you hear a lot about people who are willing to load in their financial situation. Here's how much I have saved. Here's my monthly bills. And I'm very happy to let the system tell me and give me feedback about what to correct. But when it comes to our biological data, our personal data, there's a barrier there that I think people can experience. But if you're in your own protected environment, it's a great way to get some feedback, and then ask it for recommendations, but understand when you're maybe going into something more clinical. I mean, just such great recommendations. I want to get to, we've got a couple really good questions and we're going here, but I want to talk a little bit about culture, what I describe as culture. I deal with this all the time. And it's much easier, again, we are much better as people at corrective behavior, because it's easier to say this was broken and now it's fixed. And I can clearly see visually or experientially that something has been corrected, as opposed to investing time in something that never happened. So how do we create this culture of prevention, whether it's in healthcare, leadership, education? This is a real behavioral shift that people need to get used to, investing for the long term, making choices today that don't pay off for a long time. How do we do that? What are you seeing in this world of the intersection of AI and healthcare?
Yeah, we need to work hard on making sure that our data is transparent. In this black box, like how does AI work? What does it do? What is it biased towards a certain population in the United States or in the world? Case in point, I was in Germany giving a talk about dermatology, and it really hit me hard when I realized, man, when I was a medical student, all my books in dermatology were of a certain type of race, and it never had other types of races. And then when I realized, it's true, this data set only knows what it knows, and it's trained on the biased information, and it doesn't have the data for other populations. So it makes sense it's going to mess up on other populations of the world. And so to that, we need to change that culture. We need to make sure, hey, this data, if it's saving lives, does it represent everybody that we're using? When I go speak around the world, I challenge the local leaders. I'm like, hey, do you have an AI that's not ChatGPT? Do you have an AI that is for the data sets in your population? Because if you're using AI and that AI was used and trained for the United States, but you're using it in another part of the world, does it translate? And sometimes the answer is it doesn't. So number one, data transparency. Two, I said it earlier, we need to align our incentives. Are we aligned in that we're aligning and helping reward for preventative care? And are we making sure that the system's set up where we're not putting our wearable on a dog and now we're getting points? Like, it's truly helping us. The second is we need to do better. This is why I love personally giving these TED Talks, because I'm telling a story. I'm sharing like real examples. Like, this is what I saw. This is what's going on. This is how we can change the world, so that those stories go on to other people and it changes that culture. And then the last, I really think it's about micro habits. When this stupid thing tells me I didn't sleep, I'm like, frick, okay, tonight I probably need to make sure I sleep. When I get a little nudge, be like, hey, dude, walk up, walk around. You've been sitting on your butt all day. I was like, all right, fine. and then just those small habits become better habits.
Yeah.
One of my biggest things that I'm trying my best, and I've done a pretty decent job, is every morning before I take my first Zoom call, I try to walk 10,000 steps. So that
Wow.
way I know that I got my stuff done. If I sit my butt for 12 hours, I've already walked and I know that that risk has been changed. But again, those micro habits become better habits. And then those longer habits hopefully increase my longevity.
Yeah, that's great. And I just saw a study, or I saw an article about the study that I think they've lowered the estimate to 7,000 steps. Anything over 7,000 is
Yes, they
you get
did.
the same biological benefits. So you save yourself 3,000 steps, even if you don't want to keep doing. So we've got a couple questions in here that I want to address. And if anyone's looking at this live, you'll see a really cool image behind you about Phantom Space Corporation. And just a couple days ago, we changed your title for this event. So talk to us about where you are and what you're working on now, and particularly the question that we got in the chat was, so A, would you be willing to share insights about the remarkable technological achievements and advances that are happening in the company that you're now a part of? And they were talking a little bit about some of the work on the space station. So can you tell us what you're diving into and where this whole spaceborne healthcare system is heading?
Yeah, I am so honored and like just blessed. In fact, I told myself I would never work for anybody. I would only work for myself. I would only start companies and I would only be on the private side. And they asked me to come on board. I'm the chief AI officer for a company called Phantom Space Corporation. And what they do is they have the entire vertical. They have rockets. So they're launching rockets and engineering them. These guys were the ones that started SpaceX, and they literally were the guys who took Elon Musk to Russia to buy rockets, and they're the engineers that create the Falcon that goes up and down on rockets. The second, they are creating satellites and creating how those satellites work and putting them out in orbit, and it's kind of cool. And then the last that I'm so excited about, they got a patent that is the only data center that can exist in outer space, meaning the data center, like when you use your ChatGPT or AI, it goes to the data center and it's processing. They have the patent to put that now in outer space. And there's so many applications. How I am part of the company, obviously, I'm helping them leverage AI to be more efficient and continue to grow. Another part of my job is how can we leverage AI in outer space? So I'm literally coming up with different applications and how we can use outer space to help us on Earth. And then moving forward, obviously, there's going to be in the future people living in Mars and people living outside of the world and working on some AI systems and space technology so that when we do have people out in space, I'm helping kind of pave that road. And so I just feel really honored to be part of this. Now, the holographic technology, I've been working with Fernando here, he's on the comments, and he and I are working on this idea. It's a separate company of having a hologram, and I could be your hologram doctor and using AI and leveraging. So that's another thing I'm working on. So it's just feel really blessed to be in this space.
Yeah, it's when you told me about that, I really am just shocked at where we're heading. And what does this mean for terrestrial healthcare? Are there any implications for this new horizon and what's changing here, or is it really an opportunity to start fresh?
I really think it's huge. I mean, think of some simple example. You need a doctor. You're on let's just say in the middle of international travel and you're flying to Europe, but you're in the middle of, the Atlantic, having Starlink to be able to come in and communicate with the doctor to telemedicine, or having you're in the middle of the mountains and you can't get a hold of a doctor, but now we have a satellite and now you can get a hold of a doctor. I mean, it just changes things, taking it to another level. I know again this sounds big brotherish, but if you allow, and I can monitor you from space, literally you could be anywhere in the world. And again, I'm not trying to monitor you as like trying to control you, but if I
Sure.
can look at your heart and heart rate and your variables and then say, hey dude, something's going on with you, you need to go to the ER. I mean, that literally changes things, goes back to this conversation, preventative medicine.
Yeah. It's such a takeaway for me in this conversation that trust is an essential element of our ability as individuals to get the benefit out of AI. It needs the information in order to scan in ways that we can't. And look, we understand that there's a lot going on in the world right now, that people have trust issues. We've had conversations on this show about that. But I really do think you're encouraging people to find ways to offer up your data. And I might hypothesize that somebody at the end of their life, or that someone who's had a traumatic event, if you told them, hey, you'd be alive 10 years longer if you had made a different decision 20 years ago, every person would probably take it, right?
Yes.
Everyone would say, I wish I could go back and make a different choice years ago. And of course, we could go down the pathway of youth versus age. You brought that up earlier, and the things that we wish we did and didn't do when we were younger. But I think you're suggesting we've got an opportunity to correct some of that now. There's been a bunch of great comments from Andre Watts in the chat about some of these bigger questions. We can't get to them all, but we'll would love for you to address some of those when we're done in some responses, because there's really some interesting questions in there, giving us some of maybe the bigger existential questions that we've also addressed. But we're at our time a little bit, and I want to give you your bonus question, which actually ties in quite nicely, as there's been a tradition on this show, which I blatantly stole from another podcast, The Diary of a CEO, but I think it's wonderful. The last guest leaves a question for the next guest. And so it just worked out that this was perfect. What is the one thing that AI can't replace in the healthcare industry, and where will humans always be essential?
Yeah. I truly think it'll never replace this human touch, this tone, this intimacy, that you have this bond with your relationship. And I hate saying never, because I think I can honestly say our generation ish, the future generations that are growing up on iPads, seeing, talking, eventually they'll have a robot nanny, and they'll have a bunch of technology, and they'll just see the world differently. And I see that changing. But for now, I don't see that human touch going away anytime soon because of AI. Because if anything, I see it as improving. Let me give you a quick example. I hate calling out some of my colleagues, but some of my colleagues suck. They do not have this rapport. They're just like a robot. They're just like, hey, you got cancer. I got to go to my next patient. I'm like, dude, put some like care into this thing.
Sure.
And so here's an example where I talked to some of my blunt doctors, and I'm like, dude, let's videotape you. Or I see I'm aging myself. Let's record yourself, and then let's use AI to now help me with my words, my approach, my tone. And now I'm saying, let's use AI to increase my emotional intelligence for healthcare.
What a great recommendation. That is such a good example. And I think, again, I'll just say it, and I've talked about this in my book. We are a social species. Social behavior, interaction, community, it is the most rewarding biological behavior we can engage in. And so I think while you can use AI for a lot of things, we still like to be around other people. We still want comfort. We still want support. We still want that kind of an engagement. Dr. Castro, tell us, where can people find you? Where can people follow you? And is there anything you'd like to offer up to those folks watching today in terms of how to connect with you? I think this has just been so great. You've got a lot more to say and a lot more to share. How do people get in touch?
Well, first of all, I made it pretty simple. If you do Harvey Castro, MD, as in medical doctor, I'm on everything: TikTok, YouTube, you name it, all the major social media. Second, I'm going to highly encourage you, come to my website, harveycastromd.com. Under the resources page, or sorry, speakers page, there's a little widget at the bottom right. It's a chat bot. It has all my books. So if there's a question you have, literally it'll go through my books. And if I've talked about it before, it'll tell you. It's kind of cool. And then if you're in another country, I know we are both Hispanic. On one of the pages, there's a bot in Spanish, so you can have a conversation with me in Spanish, and it's my clone voice, how I sound in Spanish. And it does sound like me. So if you want to play with that. And then the last, I highly encourage you to take a look at this Phantom Space. It's really cool. It's really the future, and I'm biased when I say it. I really think this will be the next level thing that's going to be happening. So it's really early, but take a look.
That's great.
Oh, and sorry, one last thing. Go on Amazon and type in my name. I have like 27 different books on different topics. My favorite one personally is a book called Success Reinvention, and it's how we can reinvent ourselves to be successful.
That's great. Thank you. You are it's very clear why you're a top voice You are prolific, you're articulate, you're leading a conversation that we absolutely need. I wish we could keep going. Please do follow Dr. Castro, follow his new venture. And thank you again for being part of the Top Voice community. Thanks for tuning in. This will be up live, or this will be up on YouTube shortly and up on all the podcast platforms. Thanks again, Dr. Castro. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk to everyone soon. Take care. We'll see you next week.